How's it going, guys? Just a quick video. I'm about to install some upgraded slider pots to my Taranis. This radio is an early version B model, and it has the shoulder slides here, which are, as you can probably hear, those ratcheted ones. They don't feel particularly nice, and it's very hit and miss as to finding the centre of the centre of travel. Now, as I understand it, FrSky since February of 2014 have done away with those and are now including these with all new Taranis builds. But I stand to be corrected there, because that's at least something I read on RC groups. Now, as you can see straight away, if you have the same radio I do, that is, that these are an entirely different potentiometer. The other thing about these is there is no ratchet. They're entirely smooth, but there is a nice positive centre detent on there. The throw is about 90 degrees, I would say, which it could be a little bit short, but I don't think it's much different from the originals. I would like to see a little bit more throw. The actual degree in which you can rotate this thing is dictated by the length of this slot. And inside that slot there's a little wing on the slider, on the lever, which limits its travel. However, that's as you will see later on, that's a bit academic. I can understand why FrSky limited it to 90 degrees. As I said, later on I'll explain why. Now, rather than waste everyone's time, I've already basically disassembled my radio. It's just sitting here loose, unscrewed. You might note that I've removed the battery. Always a very, very good thing to do if you're working on your radio. It saves grief later on should you accidentally short something out. Okay, so we'll flip the radio over and we'll take that cover off. Okay. Now, there are any number of videos on YouTube showing you how to get in and out of these radios, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. Okay. Now, as you can see, this is one of the original sliders. You see it has the metal can, and it has cheap crap written all over it. Definitely a bean counters solution, not an engineer solution. It's quite simple to change, but there are a couple of gotchas. As I found out, this is my second attempt at this video, because the first one did not go well, and I'll explain that as well. Okay, quite clearly these are held in with plugs. Now, I've actually loosened these, but when you remove them, don't yank on the wires, and grab the plug and support the printed circuit board and rock the plug out. Okay, so we've got that one removed. The same deal again. Support the PCB so you don't stress it when you're pulling the plug out. Rock the plug and it will eventually come free, and you can remove the switches. Now, before I get too carried away, I should mention, before we go any further, to consider where the switches were when you pull the radio apart. Okay, now by default, when you power on the Taranis, all switches should be in the forward position or down, depending on the location of the radio. So I suggest that before you proceed with this job, is to put the radio into that position where the thing is ready to fly. You haven't got throttle warnings, you haven't got switch warnings, it's ready to go. Then when you remove the switches, you know exactly what position they should be when you return them to the radio later on. Okay, so we remove those. The next thing we need to do is to separate the old sliders from the switches, because when you get the kit, all you get is the slider assembly and the plugs, no switches. I should note this is not an original switch. I snapped off the long flatted lever one a while back, and I'm still hunting around trying to find a replacement. Many of the Taranis dealers are actually listing them as a spare part, but no one has them in stock at the moment for what I can tell. Okay, once again, don't pull the wires. And as a secondary one on these switches, you can see that the actual connections are small, not very robust. So when you pull them apart, I suggest that you support the socket part, the plastic socket, with your thumbnail, so that when you pull the plug out, you're not putting undue stress on the terminals. And it's proving to be a little stubborn, but eventually it will come free. And we'll do the same with the other one, same trick. Thumbnail under the socket, and gently rock out the plug from the socket. Okay, so we've now got rid of the old sliders and we're ready to install the new ones. Now here's the catch. This is the reason for version 2. When I initially did this video, I did not realise that there is in fact a right hand and left hand version of this. A quick glance and they look identical, but they're not. The principal difference is this little notch here, and that notch has a big bearing on how the case reassembles later on. If you assemble it incorrectly, then the case will not go together very well. Also, if you assemble it incorrectly, when you move the slider, it'll move correctly in the forward direction, but it will hit the case on the return stroke, limiting the amount of throw you get out of the slider. So it's important that you actually have this around the correct way. Now the simple way to work it out is to take the slider, move it all the way forward, okay, and whichever side seems to throw the furthest, like in this case this side seems to fall short, centre's there, forward's there. Calling that forward, that goes forward in the radio. So this, in this case, it fits into this slot. Okay, now if you don't do that, let me just quickly close up this case and I will show you what happens. If you don't do that, let me just need to refocus here quickly. If you don't do that, what will happen is you'll end up with an ugly gap around the top here, and the slider will bind with the case. This one is around the correct way, so it doesn't do that. But if you put it in back to front, which I'll now demonstrate, I'll take this one out and replace it with its opposite hand mate, and try and find the slot. There we go. When you go to put the case together, it doesn't want to meet up. The slide will move forward okay, but as you can see, it's binding up on the case. So it's important that you get the correct hand, the right hand and left hand. I'll be the first to admit it had me stumped when I first did this video, hence the second video. It's a bit of a trap for young players. Okay, so having said that, I'll just reiterate. Look at the slider. Let me just refocus again. Okay. Looking at the slider, whichever side the lever sort of travels further on, like that's just an extreme travel there, that's the extreme travel there, there's the centre. Okay, this side goes to the top of the radio. Okay, so in that case it goes into this slot here, and by process of elimination this one has to go into this slot, and you can see that the sliders move nicely. No problems there at all. Now, I mentioned before about the positions of the switch. When I pulled this radio apart, all of the switches were in their default position. So by default, this switch, this lever, needs to be down. Okay, which puts the socket, here into the corner of the radio. And when you do that, things suddenly become rather tight and confused. Okay, let's pull this out. That's where the switch needs to sit. Let me just move this into the shot a bit better. That's where the switch needs to sit. When you come to put the slider in, you can see that there's not a lot of room to play with. In fact, the heat shrink sleeving is actually hanging up on the side of that socket. So what I recommend you do is to make sure on this side that the pins are straight and that they come straight down, so the wire exits straight vertically. Because if you compare it with the old ones exited the potentiometer axially, these come off radially, and it means you need to be a little bit more careful about how you assemble this thing. Okay, so we've determined which slider goes where. It's now a simple matter of plugging back in our switches. Once again, hard to go wrong here. It only goes in one way. It goes in that way, in fact. And again, do your best to support the socket as you reinsert the plug, so you don't put too much strain on the small connecting wires. And I shall switch down as a standard the standard position for the switch, or the normal position you might say, and I will insert the slider. Now, here's another good thing I like about these new sliders. On my old sliders, they did not fit very well at all. They wobbled around, rattled around, and it felt not very nice at all. Now, whether by design or by a happy accident, I'm not sure. I'd like to think that Free Sky fixed the problem, but the new backing plates, the new plastic backing plate which holds the potentiometer, is actually a little bit bigger. I measured it earlier. We can do it again, I suppose. This one here is 1937 versus the old one 1896. So it's a little bit bigger, and that's just enough to ensure that when you place the backings plate into the slot, that it's a nice firm fit, and it gives you that nice repeatable feel at the lever. Very nicely done, thank you. Like I said, hopefully that is not just a happy accident, but a design improvement on Free Sky's part. Now, having done that, I'm just going to slip on the retaining nut. This is a temporary measure so that when I assemble the radio I don't lose the switch, but at this point in time I want to leave the switch in a slightly movable position. Okay, same on the other side, no deviation from the standard methods there. Put the plug around the right way might help. Once again, I like to support the end of the socket while I'm pushing in the plug, and again, this being the trainer switch, normally it is down, so we can replace that into the frame as well, and slide on its locking ring. And again, I'm leaving it just a little bit loose for the moment. Okay, we now have everything physically fitted, and it's now a simple matter of plugging it in. Now with the plug there is two keys, and on the socket there's a wide slot, so it's a bit hard to go wrong. There is one thing though, as before when I was pulling the plug out, putting the plug back in, again support the printed circuit board and push the plug together with a pinching action so that you don't bend the printed circuit board. You don't want to crack the circuit board. And exactly the same again on the other side. Get the polarity correct. Feed it into the socket, and with a pinching action push the plug home into the socket. And this one's a little bit no, maybe not. Okay, so in essence that's it, that's the conversion done. The only thing remaining to do is to reassemble the radio. These always come loose, they're a pain. Once again, switch down because I've already preset that before I pull the radio apart. And again here. So put that into the socket, into its position rather, and we'll close up the case. Now I like to pre-align the bottom of the case so that it gives you the best opportunity to get everything lined up, and this time it's gone together nicely. It did not do that last time, trust me. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. The camera cut out on me. because of the 20-minute time limit on the recording. This has been recorded with a digital SLR, and for some crazy reason 20 minutes is all you're allowed to record at any one time. Anyhow, while you're away, I have fully assembled the radio and all the switches are in and tight, and we should probably check the calibration of their new sliders. So we'll turn the radio on.
You really turned me on. Throttle warning, low rates.
Okay, so the radio's in a ready to fly condition at the moment. Now, the area of interest for the moment, we want to look at this vertical bar and this vertical bar to ensure that we're getting 100% throw with our new sliders. This radio obviously was calibrated with the old sliders in position, and by replacing those potentiometers, the calibration on the sliders could be wrong. So what I'll do is I'll bring this a bit closer and refocus. Okay, so we're using the right slider. You can see that horizontal bar going up down. Now you might note that the at its minimum it's not quite 100% down. It's fine on the upstroke, but it's a little bit short on the downstroke. You go over to the other side and the left hand side slider, that one is looking to be about 100%. That's better, a bit more contrast. And we go up to plus 100, so that the left one actually looks okay. The right one is probably entirely usable, but for the sake of the exercise we'll recalibrate the controls for the radio anyway, just for the completeness of this video. Okay, so just to quickly recap, to get to the radio calibration screen, we do a long press on the on the menu button, and then scroll and push the page button to get to page 7. But before we do, yes, okay, page 7, we're at the calibration screen. Now you can see, well, hopefully you can see, I'll move it a bit closer again and refocus. There we go. As I move the sticks, you can see the little icon moving up and down, left and right, throttle up, throttle down, aileron left, aileron right, slider right, slider left, and the 2 potentiometers on the front panel. Okay, so basically we need to push enter to start the calibration routine. So push start, center the sticks and sliders. So move the sliders to the center detent on both sides. Move the potentiometers to their mid-range as well. Bring this other one up a bit. Okay, and press enter again. Move the sticks and all the potentiometers. So we're going to go around, basically just go around the block on the one stick, around the block on the other stick. Move the sliders fully in, fully up, return to 0, fully up, fully down, return to 0. Potentiometers up and down, return to 0, up and down again, return to 0, and we're done. And push exit to escape the screen. So now when we test the we go back to that horizontal, that vertical bar, We test the slider now, we get minus 100%, plus 100%. On the other side, 100%, minus 100%. Now you can verify the actual travels numerically without rather than relying on this the graphical representation here. It's by doing something similar to what we just did. Press and hold menu and page through to analog inputs. Okay, so this is showing you the actual readings that the radio is currently reading from the potentiometers. I'll move the right stick and you should see analog 8, which is A8, move from minus 100 to plus 100, back to 0. That's the center position, so the potentiometer is centered nicely. And the left stick is analog 7, so it goes to 100%, minus 100%, back to 0, so it's centered perfectly as well. That's terrific. And you can look at the other sticks too if you want, but it's probably academic at this point in time. So that's how you can tell numerically whether and accurately whether the thing is recentering or not. Your stick and slider positions. Okay, so that completes the installation and calibration of the potentiometers, the slider pots. So in conclusion, it's a worthwhile modification, definitely worthwhile. The original pots that I had fitted to the radio were cheap, to say the least. I didn't like the heavy ratchet, and the centre position was hard to find. These new potentiometers are smooth. They offer a nice positive centre detent, and there's enough resistance where you're not going to inadvertently brush them and move them from your set position. So that's good. They fit into the house. The actual back plate fit into the case. In my case, at least, is a lot better than the old ones. The new sliders fit in there like they're properly fitted to the case, where the other ones they flopped around a bit. In fact, I had to put some packing in there to make them more stable, but I haven't had to do that with these ones because the back plates are just a little bit bigger, which is just enough to do the trick. Okay, where did I buy the parts? Well, it seems that Free Sky are finally catching up on supply and demand, and there are some spare parts available. Switches are a notable exception at this point in time. I think you still can't find too many switches. However, other bits and pieces are available, and these sliders are one, and you can get them from basically anyone that deals with Free Sky stuff. So if you're in the US, at Loft Hobbies or something like that, I got these from a local seller, boltrc.com. Yeah, Mark, who runs the business, he's based in Western Australia, as I am, so it was very convenient for me to order through him. And I have to say that at the time I placed the order, I placed the order for the sliders and a few other bits and pieces from his website, and prior to sending the parcel, which was dispatched in a very timely manner, he actually telephoned me to say that I'm sorry, one article that I had ordered is out of stock, but is waiting on stock, on a restock in a few days. It's just waiting on the customs to release the parcel. In the meantime, he sent the bulk of the order to me, and with the promise to send the last remaining item a few days later. And true to his word, he emailed me last Friday, today is Monday, to say that the parts are clear customs and that he will be sending them out. So with a bit of luck, I'll see that tomorrow. So thumbs up to Bolt RC. I have good service, can't complain. Now while we're talking about Bolt RC, a bit of a free plug here, I suppose. This radio I bought from Hobby King because at the time Hobby King were the most convenient source for these radios. Nobody had them in stock. Nobody could tell me when they could get them, and some of the prices they were asking were crazy. If you looked on eBay, certain people had bought up, you know, half a dozen units or whatever, and were trying to sell them on eBay at grossly inflated prices. Don't feed the sharks, fellas. Okay, so I bought mine from, as I said, I bought mine from Hobby King, and I was reasonably happy with this, with the delivery service. It was, it went round, it certainly went round the traps. It went via Fiji, which I can't understand, but anyway. It took, I think, probably best part of 2 weeks to arrive. So when you're buying a big article like this, you're pretty keen to get your hands on it pretty quickly. So 2 weeks was a bit of a test of will. And I think that, don't quote me, but I think I paid about $50 in freight to get it here. Now, if you go to boltrc.com, you will see that he has Taranis in stock, available for sale, and his banner price is $235, which is what you might think more than what Hobby King are charging, but you need to compare apples with apples, not apples with oranges. When you buy from Mark, he's supplying the radio, the aluminium case and the neck strap, and he's upgraded the standard 800 milliamp hour battery pack to the large capacity 2000 milliamp hour pack to better meet his customers' expectations. Added to that, and this is the real sealer for people in Australia at least, freight is free. So when you take into account how much it's going to cost to actually send this radio to any destination in Australia, and postage in Australia is not cheap, and the fact that you're getting the high capacity battery, you can add receivers, as many receivers as you like, and there's no extra charge in terms of freight. Obviously you've got to pay for the receiver, but after all said and done, that's more than competitive with any price that Hobby King can offer, including freight, at least to Australia anyway. So I highly recommend you go and have a look at what he has for sale. He's mainly into FPV stuff, so most of the articles he sells is FPV related. However, there are some more general lines as well, like heat shrink tubing, propellers and what have you. Yeah, so I'm very happy. I'm very happy with his service and the delivery time. And as for the radio, well, it's a no-brainer really, guys. Even if you're not a user of the sliders, it's worth the $8 to $10 and changing them out just for that nice warm feeling you get from a nicely fitted and nicely functioning radio. So that's it. She's all over. I hope you managed to sit through all this. I've dribbled on a fair bit, I suppose. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope it was use. Ciao.